Community. We are so excited to be here with you all. My name is Jonathan Carver. I am honored to be here to be able to be kind of sort of hosting this event with Kyle Norton and my man Jordan, who's on the team with me. Just want to say thank you so much. This is the No Adoption Required. We're going to be covering what we believe are 10 effective automations that you can deploy in your team to be able to have hopefully more revenue and more revenue generating activities, which we'll dive into a second. So before we get into it, Jordan, if you go to the next slide, let's do a quick intros. We'll start with our esteemed customer and guest, Kyle. Let's do your thing, my man. If anyone doesn't know you, let's make sure they know who you are.
Appreciate you having me on. My name's Kyle Norton. I'm the CRO at owner.com. Been in tech sales leadership for most of my career. Spent a bunch of years at Shopify before here, and been at Owner for 3 years. We're Series C stage vertical SaaS software. So you can think of us as Shopify for restaurants. So we do their websites, online ordering, email, text message marketing, a bunch of other stuff all wrapped up into one package done on the behalf of the customer. San Francisco based. I'm in Toronto, and we've got people all over the world.
Awesome. Love it. Jordan, your turn.
Hey, good to be here with everyone. My name is Jordan, Senior Sales Engineer at Momentum. I've been here for a few years, gotten to see lots of different ways in which customers are using Momentum and really driving adoption in a low friction way. And so hopefully going to be sharing a lot of that with you today.
Love it. And my name is Jonathan Carford. Some people call me Coach. I'm the head of growth for Momentum. I was an ex-customer before and loved it so much that I had to join the team. And I want to say before, Kyle, first off, I just want to say publicly, thank you so much for being an amazing customer and proponent and advocate for us. Like, you can't say how much it means to us and how helpful it is. And just want to say thank you for everything you've done for us, and congrats on their latest series announcement, as well as multiple awards you've had for a good reason. I just want to say thank you. And then to you, Jordan, yeah, man. And to you, Jordan, people don't know this. I'm trying to get him out more because he's kind of like one of those, maybe I should say secret, but like one of the masterminds of Momentum to be able to implement some really cool, amazing things on the back end, which is why I brought him to actually showcase and talk through some of the automations that he so intelligently does with, in his sleep, because he just knows the system backwards and forwards. So very grateful to have both of you here with us. Okay, Jordan, let's go through. So I'm going to go through a few slides and we'll go through some automations. I wanted to point out something that we at Momentum believe that kind of drives what we do here. And that is this two phrases. One is that we believe that humans should be the source of relationships and excellence. Push one more slide, Jordan. Not for data entry or for data sourcing. Too many times I think we are expecting humans to be doing things that they're not necessarily good at. And so if we expect humans to be the data source or delivery, it dampens their ability to have good revenue generating activity time. So if you look at all the stats from Salesforce to Gartner to pretty much wherever you look at, the average RGA time is 28%. I'm curious if anyone out there is measuring right now where you're at, but that's the average across the board, regardless of industry or size. And world-class, if you go to the next one, is 45 to 50%, which is crazy. And I believe there is a recording going out today. If you can confirm me, Melanie, in the background, but there should be. We'll make sure we get the recording out too. Now, the crazy thing is with Kyle, he announced publicly at SaaStr, you go to the next slide, they're going for 70, 80%, even 90% RGA time. So before we move forward, Kyle, you want to talk about this real fast? How do you measure that? How do you think about it? Kind of give us your view.
Yeah, so this has been a long obsession of mine since 2015. I think I did my first time study with my BDR team and found that close to 50% of my team's time was going wasted, in my opinion. And so we're spending a bunch of time trying to figure out all of the different ways that we can automate anything that's not high leverage. And so you could call them RGAs, revenue generating activities, or just like high leverage activities. What are the actions that a rep and a rep alone can take to advance their deals, their pipeline, and add value to the business? We're probably somewhere in the range of like 60+% RGA time now. Our reps still do a bunch of call prep and follow-up work, and we're finding ways to continue to streamline some of it. But yeah, aspirationally, if I could get to 80% of a rep's day actually working with customers, we'll be in a pretty good spot. Because if you can just do that shorthand math, say, if world class is 40%, if you can take that 40% and get it to 60%, all of a sudden your entire team can produce 50% more revenue. And,
Yep.
we would all kill for 10% more revenue, let alone 50%. And I feel like this is one of the biggest leaks in a revenue system.
Totally. Going off those numbers, go to the next one for me, Jordan. We've been doing some calculations, and this is not exactly perfect math, but what we're seeing as a pattern is that pretty conservatively, every 1% in RGA increase gives you a 0.4% in revenue. So if you give an example, if you go to the next one, Jordan, this means that if you have $50 million and you're able to increase from a total time of 25% to 35%, that's $2 million of revenue potentially. Obviously, there's other factors like pipeline and other kind of stuff, but there are tons of different things that can leverage that. And so go to the next one, Jordan. There's a lot of different things you can look at. The biggest one, the biggest, I mean, I'm curious what you think, Kyle, in your history as a sales leader, but consistently throughout research that I've been looking at through McKinsey and Deloitte and Gartner and Forrester and all these places, is that CRM data entry is one of the worst proprietors of time being sucked. And that's not just the opportunity entry, but it's like activity logging and information gathering and all this stuff. And yet with so much time spent on that, the data is horrible. And then obviously we have the other areas around just the prospecting time. So people are looking in the wrong places for prospecting or trying to develop more relationships. A lot of times sales reps get pulled into sales support or customer success issues. Travel obviously is a part of it. And then lastly is your admin time or like internal training enablement time. So Kyle, tell me your thoughts on this. Does this feel accurate go back to the last one, Jordan? Does this feel accurate to
Yeah.
you?
I would say the CRM data entry could be even more than 23% of what they're spending time on. Same with unproductive prospecting time. That you would be horrified if you really went lead by lead. I would encourage people to do this. It's a pretty good exercise. You or a BDR leader on your team, go lead by lead and ask yourself if that's like an A+ lead with a good company fit, the right title, the right seniority, the right type of fit customer, and just like take 100 of them and go score them on a scale of, it could be ABC or 1 to 10, and look at how many B's and C's are in that group. Could be like 40% of the leads that your team is dialing are subpar. Maybe not a complete waste, but you don't need your team dialing C's. You barely need your team dialing B's. So that number could be even higher. And this is where efficiency is lost, and why people wonder why their BDR teams can't produce the right LTV CAC and their sales teams are struggling to produce revenue with the right level of efficiency and the right unit economics. Like these are the culprits right here.
Totally. Why do you think people don't do that? Just time, pressure? I mean, because this seems like, to me, a very obvious, easy thing to, what gets in the way?
It's boring and it's not glamorous or fun work. And I find that leaders gravitate to stuff that's a lot shinier. This is like the least exciting work you can do. And when I talk to leaders about it, they like shake their heads like, yeah, absolutely, totally. Like that's such a good idea. And then I follow up in like a couple weeks, or we see each other at a dinner. I'm like, hey, like, did you talk to that data vendor I mentioned? Did you get your data ops team to do whatever? And it's like, oh yeah, I mean, we were just, it's quarter end and we got busy and yada, yada. There's 1,000 other things that are easy to spend time on. And like, that is the heart of procrastination. It's finding creative ways not to do the thing you really know you should be doing. This is the thing that you really should be doing. And the important piece here is it's not just a waste of time, but in an AI world and where we're going, data is going to be one of the most important competitive moats that any company has. And if your market data is poor and your activity data is poor, it's not being captured and logged properly, or it's being done semi incorrectly, your you will never get the full advantage of all of the incredible AI tools that are in the market because it's garbage in, garbage out. I wrote about this on my newsletter on Sunday, someday in the last couple of days.
Right.
That data foundation is one of the most important things you can do.
Totally. Scott just asked a question. I'm curious what you would say to this. How you said high leverage activities, but how would you define revenue generating or high leverage? What do you categorize those? Is that customer facing or something that drives the relationship forward?
Yeah, customer facing, making follow-up calls, responding to customer emails, things that things that move you closer to winning deals or retaining revenue or expanding revenue. Things that would
Cool.
not qualify is entering a bunch of notes after a demo call or creeping through a Salesforce report trying to find people to prospect into. Those they obviously are part of generating generating revenue, but they would not count as an RGA in my mind.
Cool. Hopefully, Scott, that answers the question, but that's said better than I ever could, which is good. Jordan, go to the next slide. So I want to talk really fast about what Momentum does. I call them the three capabilities, and I say this as an ex-admin and user of Momentum, as I've tried to explain this to people. But there's three main pillars or capabilities. The number one thing is structured first-party data provider, meaning it's not just analyzing and listening to your calls. It's actually structuring it and validating and cleaning the data and then sending it to where you need to go so that you can have usable data. It's like what Kyle said, where you can use for other AI automations or just data in general to make better decisions. We are able to do that at scale. So next one up, Jordan, is communication. So when we have the right data that's been cleansed and validated, we can then send whatever data is necessary to whoever needs to have it. So you have the right signal to the right person at the right time, like to a CRO like Kyle, or to the rep themselves to understand what's going on in the deal or whatever the case might be. And then lastly is what we're going to be talking about more today, which is orchestration and automation. So Momentum is literally at its core an orchestration layer, which just means that we run multiple automations happening at once in order to make sure everything's happening like the word suggests, in concert with the deal, so that things happen as fast as humanly possible and in not getting in the way of either the deal, the customer, or the sales rep and what they're trying to accomplish. Now, one thing to know, if you go to the next one, Jordan, is that it's not
Hey,
just simply
Coach K,
go ahead. Go
one
ahead.
thing to stress on here: everybody
Yeah.
wants three, but nobody wants to do one. But you can't get three
Yeah.
without one. You don't get agents and fancy workflows and all sorts of like cool AI stuff unless your baseline data is great. And I would just encourage people to think about solving one as the do not collect $200 activity to figure out. That's where that was our original Momentum use case. It's still the thing that provides by far the most value because nothing else is possible without it. So I know we all want agents and to like have all this fancy stuff happen, but the most important thing is taking unstructured data that's happening across the customer journey and putting it into a structured format, which is like stuff it in a field, put it in a Salesforce field, put it into Snowflake, then the world is your oyster.
Yeah, and going with that fact, it's more than just loading in a text field in Salesforce. There are more than 51 different types of Salesforce fields, and most technology that integrates into Salesforce can only do 3 or 4. Momentum can do 95% of them. So it gives you the ability to have a lot of different types of structured data. So whether you use Momentum or not, to your point, Kyle, I think the point is saying, do you have the ability to grab unstructured data so you can get both qualitatively and quantitatively what you need in order to execute on whatever you're trying to accomplish, which I think is awesome. Katie, you asked a question. Love the question. I'm actually going to go into it later on in the presentation. We'll go into your question. But Jordan, let's have you talk about this slide right in front of us. You're better than me to talk about it.
Yeah, so Momentum at its core is more than just sitting on top of a transcript and pulling out information and then stuffing it into the CRM in sort of a condensed format. You know, to Kyle's point earlier, if I'm able to take that transcript and understand pieces of data, put them in the shape that you need it, put it where you need it, then I can build business processes. So if I'm able to go and look across all of my different accounts and understand every time we've reached out to the account, understand the competitor contract end dates that they referenced 2-3 years ago, then now my go-to-market engineer can go build a process saying, okay, I can retarget that customer because We talked to them. They were vendor locked until 2027. And so now I'm able to go ahead and run reports and run the analytics and build the agents because I have usable data that's not just sitting on top as junk. And all of that is able to be done because we have what we call a go-to-market data refinery. What that means is we're not just sitting on top of the transcript, asking the LLM perform a task. We're running it through several different layers of automation to make sure we're arriving actually at valuable inputs and outputs, right? So we're taking all of that transcript data, the metadata, we're running it through our RAG and context engine, giving it extra levels of validation and letting you, the customer, the prospect say, hey, by the way, I want to include this information from my CRM as part of the AI's analysis. So it's not just simply going to pull in whatever is present in the call. It's actually enriching itself with other information from the CRM. And all of this lets you arrive at a very structured output. You get exactly what you need. And so when I'm able to take what you would expect from any sort of transcript digest from 70% accuracy, give or take, to 99% accuracy, that has actual meanings. Earlier we're talking about revenue generating activities and how to leverage data and how just a little bit of extra time back actually makes a big difference in steering revenue and steering a large ship. The data is the same way. If I can get from 70, 80 to 95, 99% accuracy, there's dollars associated with that. And that's what Momentum does better than anyone else.
Cool. Love that. All right. I want to make sure, Kyle, you're able to answer the question in the chat, which looks like you did. Anything else you want to say vocally? Give you a chance to talk about that to Katie's point. I think we're okay.
Yeah. Just do the ride-alongs. Like, I think, and what a ride-along is you physically sit next to your rep, sit next to your BDR, and just watch them work and have them commentate. And as they're going through, if something seems like confusing to you, be like, oh, why did you do it that way? Like, why didn't you use the tool we have for that? Oh, I don't know. It's just like sometimes it logs me out and it's just annoying. And you just do it with no judgment, no coaching. Don't coach in this scenario because you get off track. Just let them work and ask them questions as they go, like sporadically. You don't want to interrogate. You're mostly just trying to see them do their thing. And you get a pretty good picture of how your team's working. And again, you'll be horrified by what you learn. You're like, oh, so nobody uses these lovely processes that we built. And so some of it is, you got to go reinforce, and some of them you got to build new stuff. But it's one of the most influential insight gathering exercises that we do.
Totally. I did the same thing. Anytime I joined a team as an enabler, I always asked to go sit by one of the reps just to observe and not to judge. Just say, I just want to watch you click and where you go and what you do and where the content is you go and how much you have to enter in the data and all the stuff. It's like you said, it's boring, but it's very insightful. Brings a lot of rich insights for it. All right, let's talk real fast, Kyle, before we go into the automations. Of the topic of this was no adoption required. So how have you defined or using Momentum to not have a requirement of adoption, but still get the benefit of automation?
Yeah, the beauty of Momentum is that it just lives in the background, and it lives in the tools that your reps are already in. And so this is sort of a general design tenet that I have that my RevOps leader and I talk about a lot is, people have been tool fatigued for 5 years now, more. And so what we want to avoid is adding another tool, another surface for somebody to go into, because everybody's competing for the eyeballs of a sales rep. And so with Momentum, these prompts can just run in the background. It goes straight into Slack or into Salesforce. There's not like a new experience for people to learn. That I think is not just related to Momentum, but that is I think like a good design principle in a fractured world where there's all these new AI tools. How can you be really cognizant of not fracturing the experience of your sales rep and trying to keep them in one place, and so they're not bouncing around tool to tool, and because we know that leads to lack of adoption and just focus bleed.
It's kind of funny how the focus of SaaS before was how much adoption usage you got in the actual platform itself. And most AI tools now are shifting to where they go, instead of asking for the user to go to the platform or the tech is coming to them. I love that thought because it gives you right in a stream of work and it's getting away. So Jordan, let's get into it. So the goal here is to show you all 10 real live automations that we're using right now. Obviously, the first one is a pretty obvious one. Kyle, I'll let you talk about this one, is what you guys are using it. And I would love to hear more of like, what's the consequential results after having good CRM data after this first one.
Yeah. So this is, I think, a use case that everybody's going to be familiar with. There's a whole bunch of tools that that do this in the market now, but essentially, we're taking call recordings, running them through a series of prompts, and then writing to a bunch of different objects in Salesforce. That part of it cannot be understated. Jonathan, you mentioned this earlier, but the ability to write to multiple types of objects is really critical, so that you can update an account object with information that you want to keep into perpetuity. I can write specific information about the opportunity that is relevant to that selling opportunity, but also relevant to how the rep executed on that opportunity, so that I can see that data over time. The contact, the lead, the event, like all of these things are really critical. And again, this just reduces the amount of time that your reps spend after a call updating stuff. I think the one hesitation that people have here is, or one of the hesitations is, they go, well, like LLMs make mistakes, they hallucinate. So I don't just want an LLM updating all of these fields if I don't know if they're super accurate. And pretty early in our pilot with Momentum, I had the same concern. And so we were actually running the prompts and then sending the message to the sales rep in Slack for them to manually update what fields they wanted to enrich from the Momentum trigger. And then they could make any edits. They could be like, oh, that's actually a little different than what the customer said in my recollection, so they could change it. And what I found was the sales rep's interpretation of that call, the sales rep's data entry, was actually worse than the LLM. And this was like in the earlier days of LLMs. I'm sure you guys are using better models and they're much more highly tuned now. But I think one of the hesitations I hear a lot from folks is like, well, like I want to make sure the quality is really, really good, and I want the rep to review it. Don't bother. Just, if you're using a tool like this, just set it to fill out all the fields by default. A rep can go in and make changes if they need to, because an LLM is only going to hallucinate like 5-10% of the time. And a 90% data accuracy is better than what your reps are going to give you. And it's going to enable you to just fill out like 2-3 times as many fields as you could ever imagine asking a sales rep to fill out.
Totally. Jordan, I'm going to have you talk in a second, but one thing I've loved being in the marketing side and enablement is that in the past, in order for marketing to get good data from a sales rep, they'd either have to attend a pipeline review or a close-off review or something to where the human was the deliverer of data, like we said before, and even then it's skewed information. But now I can ask for 5 different fields to be filled out on every opportunity, and I don't have to ask anybody. I just get the data both from every single call update or from a signal, which is pretty cool. So I think there's so much data that's just sitting there for every single team, from finance to product to whoever, that you can leverage. It's not that when you have this ability, it opens up the doors for a lot of other use cases.
Yeah.
With that being said, Jordan, because
go ahead.
Finish
with that. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Kyle. And I'll have Jordan go after you.
Yeah, our product marketers are in there all the time. And they'll have suggestions. Hey, like, can we get this from a call? Can we ask this about a competitor? And you guys have a backfill tool as well that I think is really powerful for people getting set up for the first time. You can go and backfill a bunch of this information from your previous call recordings, so you can actually re-enrich your CRM with new questions that you might have, which is really, really powerful. There's like amazing insight there.
We see a lot of value sort of incrementally as we onboard new customers. The first always is, okay, now to the whole point of the presentation so far, we move RGA in the right direction, right? So we're not asking you to fill out the CRM anymore. You're giving that time back so you can go and take more more calls and produce more revenue. What you quickly realize is that now we're in a new paradigm where, okay, that's great that the 10 things that I was filling out before are automatically filled out, but now I can capture 50 things because there is no limit. I'm not asking anyone to put in this information because it's just a data pipeline, because it's fully automated. I'm pushing all this information. And then the third, to Kyle's point, is this can happen at any point in time. So if I want to go create that targeted email list based on whoever I pitched a certain product suite 2 years ago that we didn't have the feature set to support, but now we do, I can know for every single account who I pitched what to, and then I can retarget them as I need to. So being able to not just set it for every single call moving forward, but being able to go back as well tends to be that third unlock. And so you start to see these sequentially happen where, okay, first I'm saving time, but now I'm actually moving into all these new use cases that don't have to be just specific to sales, right? Customer success gets the benefit, marketing gets the benefit, and the like.
Mm-hmm. Jordan, real quick, the question from, I'm sorry if I say your name wrong, Pallavi Hazaria, just around autofill based on Slack conversations. So I know we do support tickets depending on the technology, text messages, calls, emails. Is Slack, I believe it's on the roadmap, but I don't think it's there yet. Is that correct?
Good question. It was, and possibly still is on the roadmap. There's a bit of controversy going on right now, and that Slack actually recently updated their APIs such that you can't ingest for model training anything from Slack. So we'll see if the backlash is enough to overturn that. But that was planned for roadmap for Momentum to ingest that context.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Next one. All right. Rep adherence. This is a fascinating one. I heard you talk about a couple of times, Kyle, if you want to dive in of like your use case.
Yeah, the beauty of Momentum and why I chose it originally is I could go in and just create whatever prompts I want and deploy them like in an hour. And so, especially when I had a small team and only contract RevOps help, there was a bunch that I wanted to know about how reps were executing, and so I could go spin up a custom field on the opportunity. And the example here is whether or not the sales rep mentioned our 5% guest service fee, because if the rep didn't mention it, oftentimes the customer was frustrated in our onboarding process. So I wanted to intercept those situations so that those deals didn't get closed until the customer really understood this well. And so I just spun up a checkbox field in Salesforce, wrote a really simple prompt in Momentum that wrote to that field, and it was only admin accessible. And then I immediately started getting this data, whether or not the reps were doing something that was really important. You can do this for everything. Like we're redoing some of our positioning methodology right now, and we're going to incrementally roll out the new methodology step by step. So instead of rolling out a whole new demo, I'm going to roll out a new intro for the demo. And the conversation I had earlier today was like, okay, here's the new demo script. This is what I want people to say. And, I pinged it to our sales ops leader. And I'm like, hey, can you spin up a Momentum field that tells us these two things, these two sort of criteria of that new call opener, so that every single call, every event record that equals status demo, we're running these prompts, and then I can get data en masse, by rep, the percentage by rep of whether or not they're using both new parts of this intro script. And you can do this for anything your little heart desires, which is the best part of it. I have fields for how many close attempts did the sales reps have, like little detailed things like, did they mention the service fee? You can automate like a specific way that you're handling a certain objection. And so you want to be careful about like how many custom fields you're dumping in there. But for the most important things that drive value for your reps, that drive the outcomes, it's a pretty slick capability.
And I love it. You brought it.
And the last thing is like, and then you can send it to Slack. So if there's, did they mention one of our partners? If they mention one of our partners, we want to make sure that the partner manager can tell that partner so that they can help support on the deal. So it goes into a specific Slack channel. just for that partner, and it has like an alert that's, the partner mentioned XYZ food company, and if it's in funnel or not in funnel for the partner, then we can take action.
That's awesome. Chris asked earlier, do you feel like, Kyle, that you ever done building momentum, or is it a continual tweaking, adding as things go?
We're always tweaking. We're always tweaking and adding and like doing little things here.
Cool. Yeah, there's Jordan, you could probably answer that too, just from, other customers, but what do you see?
Yeah. We typically see a mix. So there's certainly we want to claim victory on whatever the initiatives are at the top level for the year, right? So you come in and say, hey, I want these processes automated. Kyle just gave some great examples of things they were focused on, right? So if I'm onboarding someone, making sure that we're actually setting expectations so that when we're onboarding them, we don't have a big miss and have to lose that revenue. So we certainly have an angle of, at 2 to 3 months, we want to have you be completely built out on your top 10 use cases. And we bring some muscle there. But we always see 6 months, 9 months, 2 years, 3 years down the road. Hey, we just brought in a new head of RevOps, or hey, haven't talked to you in 6 months, but we're interested in coaching. We're interested in scoring our reps for how well they're adopting Spice or MedPick. We're bringing in consultants to help walk through an onboarding process. So there's no limit to the value there, and it tends to be focused on what are the initiatives, what are you actually driving inside of your business, and how can momentum help? Because when you can listen to all of your revenue activities and pull out data from them, there's always going to be a revenue focused initiative. And so when that changes, momentum's use cases for you will change. And we see that very commonly.
Totally. I have a question from Edward for Jordan, and then one from Jessica I'm going to throw over to Kyle. So Edward, Jordan said, do you need a programming background, or can someone with just sales background set up momentum?
Sales background. It's low code, no code interface. Think about selecting essentially criteria based on.
I can do it. You can do it.
There you go. Yep, love it. And then Kyle, for you, Jessica just said, guessing Gong will be working on such functionality as well. What would differentiate momentum versus them? And because just came off of Gong, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, Gong will hopefully be shipping some of these features, but I think they're always going to be behind. They're always going to be slow. Just fundamentally, they're in such a challenging spot, having built their own models. Like Gong is a great product. They were pioneers in a bunch of ways. They had really amazing AI for a really long time, and they could not have anticipated that OpenAI would give everybody a language model that is like 3 times as good, available via an API for basically dirt cheap. I think it's real. I like the Gong guys a lot, and they've always been good partners to me. But it's just a really unfortunate reality that the technology landscape changed so drastically that their sort of technology strategy and product positioning is under a ton of stress. So they're not going to be able to ship new features at the speed that these LLM native solutions like Momentum will be able to. So I think Gong will try to launch a bunch of this stuff, but they'll always be slower and behind. And they're going to charge you like twice as much. Like we moved off of a Gong's call recorder and moved on to Momentum's call recorder. We were the first company on the Momentum call recorder, and we were early. Like I sort of called in a favor. I'm like, hey, our Gong renewal's up. They're basically trying to charge an arm and a leg and maybe like a pinky toe. And I was like, when's this recorder product going to be ready? Because I knew it was on the roadmap. And so we jumped in early. Probably earlier than it was like really honestly ready, but I just like I refused to pay that renewal. It was so crazy. And now the Momentum solution is awesome. Like we were early, and so we were like a very beta customer, and there were some bumps along the way, but it's super seamless now, and I get way better capabilities with Momentum for way less money.
Yeah. I'll say as well as being an ex enabler, having implemented Gong 3 times in my own experience, Gong wants people inside the platform. We don't want you in our platform. We
This is
want you
my other
working.
beef. Yeah.
Yeah.
Finish your
So
thought.
yeah, that's one. And then two is Gong was built as a video library. And Momentum was built as an orchestration layer. Those are way two different things. So it may look the same on the outset, but the capabilities as a result gives you way more flexibility moving into it. So like an example would be when we have open APIs and the MCP protocol and that kind of thing gets implemented. Because we're AI native and flexible, we can shift for the times much, much faster. So there's going to be a lot of flexibility from just an orchestration layer that you can't get just from any other tool out there that's not built the same way. Go ahead, Kyle. What were you going to say?
Are you guys going to have an MCP?
Maybe I should have said that, but yes. Yes. How about that?
That's awesome. That's
Yep.
very exciting. And a good example of you guys shipping fast. The point I wanted to double click on is this thing around like the walled garden. I was constantly frustrated. Gong could have written to Salesforce fields forever ago. I think they do now, but it was only because they were forced to build that capability by the Momentums of the world. And it was always frustrating because then your reps are, it's called model context protocol, Ran.
Yeah.
But Gong was forcing your reps to live in that solution and try to update your deals there. And you could only access the information through Gong. So now you have to live in Salesforce, SalesLoft, and Gong. Or you try to consolidate everything out of SalesLoft into Gong. And I just like didn't really think it was that was the right decision. And so I think this more open architecture is something that is another design principle that we are building around. Like, I don't want to get stuck in anybody's tools. I want to be able to pull that data into Snowflake. I want it to be API into anything that we're using to be able to do, more custom stuff. And I found that was a big gap with Gong that caused me a lot of frustration.
Totally.
And a bunch of other tools.
Yeah, there's a ton of tools do the same thing. I had a RevOps leader tell me once that he felt like Momentum democratizes the data instead of holding him hostage, which I love that concept, which is pretty cool. Jordan, go to number 3. Yeah. All right. Next step, capture and forecast sync. So for you, I'd love your CRO seat. Tell me more about this one and how helpful it is for you from the forecasting perspective.
So we don't actually forecast. I do a roll up. I do we don't ask the reps to give like a commit or like an estimated deal volume. We do a fully weighted score. We do a fully weighted forecast. So I just take everything in Salesforce. I look at average win rates by pipeline stage, net new pipeline being added, and that's how I get to a forecast. And so that's really driven by having high quality data in Salesforce. So being able to automate stage changes or suggest opportunity stage changes based on what's happening in calls or what's happening, like what calls are being registered, that's important to us. So our use case is slightly different here, but the call summaries is definitely really helpful. And we're trying to do more to prep sales reps for subsequent calls with Momentum automations.
Love it.
One thing that we see really valuable. Yeah, one thing that we see pretty valuable in this space is that if Momentum's able to understand your entry and exit criteria, then we can give very clear guidance at the deal level to say, you're in stage 4, but you actually haven't located who the economic buyer is. You haven't talked about paper process at all. You should really be in stage 3. And on the individual deal level, that might move a stage or two. But if you have any sort of structure to your forecasting as that roll-up takes place, we're going to be able to see, okay, no, I have 12 opportunities that are 2 stages too far in advance, and I have 4 that are not where they should be on the other side. And so we can make the recommendation, hey, based on your own sales process, this is what you're missing. You should be in this stage, actually. And what you can do is have that. We've seen that be valuable for customers when they put that into their weighted system. And so they could actually say, hey, here's what this is. If we're just going by what the reps have given on your stages and, our close rates on those stages, here's where we're at. But actually Momentum thinks you should be here because it's just reviewing your criteria. It doesn't have the self-preservation bias. It doesn't have any of the, sandbagging that might take place. It's just looking at everything and applying the same rubric and able to judge based on your definitions, your sales criteria. Where am I actually, and what should I close based on that?
I love it. Let's keep it going. Go number 4. This is all you, Jordan, if I remember right.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that's important whenever you're looking to capture data is granularity. So there are some things that I want from every single conversation, right? Think of this as what are the next steps that we collected, or every single meeting is going to be different. What type of meeting did I just have? A very common example is, was this a demo meeting? Was this a first call? What was the outcome of the meeting? Did we have a positive meeting? Was it a no-show? Anything of the above. I want that captured at the individual meeting level. But there are certain things at the opportunity level that I need captured as well, which may consist of 6 different deals. So give me a full deal review based on those 6 events that have taken place. Make sure I'm rolling it up. Make sure I'm capturing the info in the right format, that it's easily digestible in a pipeline review. But then on top of that, maybe if I'm a larger corporation, I have 5 different opportunities open at any given time for my top 1,000 accounts. And so being able to once again roll all of that information up to the account level, because Momentum gives you that flexibility, you're not missing out on any of that detail. So whenever someone on my data team wants to go and look through, okay, for all of our demos, what was the outcome? Okay, now what was the outcome if my opportunity amount is above $100,000 or is a specific industry vertical? What I get by being able to access data with the right granularity means I get to solve for the right problem. And so I'm able to focus in, gather the information, the insights, whether it's at the account level, the opportunity level, or the individual meeting level, event level. I'm able to capture all of that and have it written back to my systems of record in a way that is accessible to my team, is actually usable.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to this. Anything you want on this one, Kyle?
No, I think you captured it pretty nicely.
Did great. Jordan, before we move forward, Pallavi asked a question around, and I know you know this because you work with all the customers we have of different sizes. Have you seen the capability of Momentum work better for SMB market versus enterprise, or has the value been consistent across segments? And I know, Kyle, you can talk about this too, but go ahead, Jordan.
Yeah, good question. I tend to see the best users of Momentum really start to take shape at that low mid-market. And the reason for that is I think once you have either a very consistent contractor in RevOps, or you have your first couple of full-time RevOps employees, they can really take the wheel and drive things in the right direction. So earlier we're talking about, okay, Momentum can shift to your initiatives. What that means is if you have someone who knows the initiatives and just puts in an hour or 2 a week or a month on driving those initiatives, then Momentum, rather than have 5 or 10 key use cases, now has 50. It's not complicated. It's not difficult to build these, but having someone who knows the initiatives from the top and can take the Momentum tool set. Typically, we start to see that whenever you have someone sort of thinking in that operations role full time. So certainly large swath of SMB customers, but really we see full value actuated when we're coming up on the lower end of mid-market.
Kyle, any thoughts on that as far as value across segments or sizes?
I was actually going to answer it in terms of like who you sell to. Do you sell to an SMB buyer? Or do you sell to enterprise? I think both are highly valuable, but your use cases are going to be very different. Like we're trying to automate high velocity information flowing across a whole ton of different calls. And it's all about like efficiency. I think if you're in the enterprise, what you're going to do is quite a bit different, because it's all about the quality of your call prep, the quality of the insights you can gather, making sure like you're never missing an insight or a takeaway from a call. And I think like both are going to be extremely valuable, but the actual like use cases and what you build is going to be quite different depending on your market.
Yeah, we've seen, and just to answer your question, Pallavi, in another way to add, is that we have customers from like Zscaler who are massive companies with a long sales cycle and big deals that see a lot of value of this. We also have Owner who has high velocity, faster sales cycles. So we have a lot of other companies who their ACV is under $2,000, but they use this because they're just hopping through calls every single day and Momentum's backing them up all the way. So in my personal opinion, I think there's value to be had across the board. to Jordan's point, just making sure you have someone to be able to actualize the plans into an AI form like Momentum. But besides that, you should be able to see value regardless of size or segment. And then Natalie, Jordan, you want to tag on this one? The buying intent and opportunity, to clarify, is that you writing a prompt that looks across multiple events, account notes, etc., and that prompt output is a qualitative summary or score? Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, so we can do either. I tend to see the best applications of Momentum whenever we are plugging in a qualitative way, but we also venture into the quantitative. The only caveat is having very clear definitions of what you're looking for. So you probably know this already if you have any experience with AI, but if you ask any model to rate your opportunity and you give it a transcript, it's not going to do a very good job. It's going to be basically useless. But what's valuable is if you say, hey, here's my sales criteria, here's who I sell to, here's my ICP, here's what good looks like, here's what bad looks like. The more information you can give, the more context you can give, the more usable that information is going to be. So we certainly, especially on the coaching side of the house, move into give me a quantitative score on this meeting, or in this case, on the opportunity, if this is the right person or if there's strong buying intent. But you have to give context. It's not, there's no magic going on behind the scenes. You have to have a very clear vision of what buying intent looks like in your organization and give that context.
Yeah. We're at 14 minutes till, so make sure we get through this. If we don't get through everything, I'll make sure I give to the Pavilion team the summary of automations. I'll send them out to you afterwards. You can have them all just in case we don't cover them all. But I want to make sure we get to at least two more. So one of them is actually next, number 5. And I think this phrase comes from you, Kyle, of KG Buyer. I don't know if I'm spelling it right or not, but you want to talk about this real quick?
Yeah, your reps are always going to wear those rose-colored glasses. And so having a second set of eyes to help the rep understand where this deal is always valuable. It could be on specific words, it could be on their talk listen ratio, it could be on the fact that they, were not very engaged at the end of a call, hesitant to commit to next steps. Again, this goes into the category of like, you can use Momentum to do whatever you can think of creatively. And so this is a good way to like get a second sense check for your sales reps.
Totally. Jordan, I thought we had another use case on this where with one of our customers, they had used the same thing to compare reps notes against Momentum notes. And not that the reps notes were bad. It's just they saw insight from what they actually put in versus what Momentum was capturing. It's kind of the same concept, right?
Yeah. So, and we do a little bit of this internally, candidly, where every time that we reach sort of the mid stages of the opportunity, we do a sort of detailed deal inspection, and we feed Momentum all of the context about our sales cycle, who we look to sell to, what good looks like, what a definition of a champion might actually be, what the definition of an economic buyer might actually be. As we all know, if someone joins a call and says they're a champion, they're probably not the champion, or they say they're an economic buyer, they're probably not the economic buyer. And so having clear definitions of those terms and scoring that across every single opportunity means that whenever a first line manager wants to meet with their rep and jump in and understand, okay, are we talking to the right person? Are we multi-threaded? Are we at the right level? Having a second opinion on that be applied across the board is a pretty common use case for us. And it's one that can't be understated because it just there's a direct correlation to winning deals, right? If before it's too late, I'm able to tell a manager, hey, this deal is not what you think it is. There are real risks here, and I'm able to identify that and flag it through Momentum. There's actual money on the line from that.
Cool. Kyle, another question from Pallavi. I love the questions, by the way, Pallavi. How do you avoid alert fatigue to make sure that I actually pay attention to not so much noise? How do you do that?
You have to be selective. That's a really good question. And so you just have to be selective and set the appropriate bar so that the value from every time you're stealing the attention of the rep is worth it. Awareness is half of it, though. The fact that you're already thinking about it is a great sign.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Because at some point they will just tune it all out.
Jordan, for time's sake, let's go to number 6 and let's skip over to probably, yeah, let's go to 6
Oh,
and
this is a
7.
good
then we'll-
one.
Yeah.
We're doing this. We call it Project X-Ray now,
Yeah.
but collecting a whole bunch of information across the sales journey and delivering it into the hands of the onboarding rep. Like, no one gives the onboarding team good enough notes, but Momentum does. So this is a good one.
Yeah, we typically see what tends to be powerful is when you actually have the interview with CS or with implementation. Hey, if you could just have any context you wanted from pre-sales, they're usually delighted because, to Kyle's point, it tends to be an underserved area where, okay, great, we closed the deal, on to the next one. Sales is already out of it a little bit in terms of the next steps there. And so Momentum collecting all of that intel and just delivering it. Hey, here's the customer, here's the timelines, here's the deliverables that we promised, here's who's going to be involved. Here's any red tape to look out for, right? Any promises that were made early on, just making sure that that information gets delivered and gets delivered consistently. One, gives you visibility you didn't have before, and two, reduces the amount of time that you have to have in a handoff meeting, right? So sales to CS, that 30-minute meeting, that 45-minute meeting is now 10 minutes, and you're just reviewing what Momentum said. And, oh, by the way, I got a Slack ping that they're interested in this. And so you're able to deliver that context very quickly and get them what they care about.
Love it. Let's roll on to 7. Let Kyle talk about this one. We'll move on to the last part. Any thoughts on this one? Field-driven logic?
Oh, yeah. This is just an extension of a bunch of the capabilities that we've already talked about. You can string things together to send more custom alerts. So, like, again, going back to Pallavi's question around alert fatigue, like, how do you construct things that are really specific and valuable for the rep? So, like, we don't want our sales reps closing customers that are under construction. So you can look at a field on the opportunity record or the account record, and then in the call transcript, if they've mentioned, oh yeah, we're just like doing some renovations right now, we'll be up and running in 60 days, then we can send a very timely alert to the manager in that sales rep to be like, don't close this deal, because we all know that construction takes way longer than it's supposed to, and we don't really want these customers just lingering around in our onboarding backlog. And you can do a lot more creative things than this, but this is a good example.
Love it. Jordan, anything at this? I know there's some fun stuff you've done in the past with others on this one.
No, that was actually a really good example. I think the best examples of this tend to be something that an outsider like myself to your business wouldn't even know. So that example of, well, in the restaurant industry, if I'm in construction, we have no way of knowing if that 30 or 60 days is actually the real timeline. And so we're going to get delayed. It's going to lead to a churn. And so being able to, from the outset, say, here's what's specific to my business. Momentum captures those details, by the way, right? So we capture the under construction, and later we use it in the business process. These tend to be industry specific, right? So if you're a cybersecurity company, if you're in finance, there are going to be specific things that you know about your business and how to operationalize the intel. And so really when we're talking about orchestration and the low need for adoption, someone who knows a bit about the business and what they care about and what's going to drive things forward, they're able to send that information. And then this can be a rep that's only been there for 2 weeks. Hey, Kyle, I just got this ping. Why do I not want to close them if they're in construction? What does that mean? And you get basically to enforce a behavior without having to have given any context ahead of time. It's like, oh, actually, we don't do that in this case. So it really, the best use cases tend to be specific to your business and your sales process and the things that you've seen. And I think that was actually a great example.
The thing I would say is that, people ask, do you have to have Momentum to run some of these automations? The answer is no. However, there's a couple of things that make us unique I want to point out. Number one is how insanely flexible you are to adjust to the customability you need as a business to do things like what Kyle's talking about, or what Jordan's talking about. Number two is that it's more than just getting a Zapier agent and throwing a prompt on it and then sending it out to Slack. You have multiple validation points and cleaning of the data to make sure it's accurate and up to date, so that it's not just noise going in from a mediocre prompt, because I can tell you from teaching prompts all day long that most people don't know how to prompt, and that's okay because we've never really been taught, to be fair. But that's why you need a technology like a Momentum that can make sure it can scrap through the data, set it in the right place, and not make it a pain in the neck for you to have to deploy because it's not customized to your own instance. So just want to add that note. Jordan, real
Zapier is a
quick,
lot harder than you'd think it is.
yeah,
We've
yeah,
gone
it
down
is.
that path for some other use cases, and oftentimes I come back to Santi and Ashley. I'm like, can you guys just do this for me? Just make
Can
Momentum
you make
do
this
this.
for me?
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Jordan, let's skip. I'll send out the last three. We can skip, or we can show them real fast, and we'll go on to the last slide. And we'll go from there. So one is competitive intelligence. This was really powerful, which kind of extension of the other things we're talking about. 9 is on product feedback, which Zscaler as a team loves this feature. Like they're not even technically users of Momentum, but they're receivers of the data inside of Slack, which is pretty cool. And then lastly is coaching, behavioral metrics. So we're able to take what a usual coaching platform would do and go on steroids and say we can track any competency you want, both in quantitative and qualitatively, and then map that into Salesforce. You can dashboard it and then correlate it with your activity or sales lagging metric, which is pretty cool. I want to make sure I could leave you off with something. So Jordan, go to the next slide. If you're asking like, what do we do? How do we move forward? And love your thoughts on this, Kyle. But I would say if you don't know where you are with like revenue generating activity, the first thing you gotta do is measure and understand where the heck are you. So whether it's a 2-week study and looking at the people and doing like a ride along what Kyle said, you want to understand where you are and identify what are the processes or the time suckers inside of your own organization. And then I quantify where's the cost. So I'm curious, Kyle, with this one, how do you, when you understand the time suckers, what's the process you go through to understand where should I focus my energy, have the biggest lift?
Um, I hesitate to give a blanket answer, but the thing that my mind jumps to is like, we all know that reps don't enter super high quality information into Salesforce, so just start there. Like if you're not getting all of the valuable information from your sales calls into structured data into Salesforce, then like I wouldn't bother with anything else. I would just figure that piece out, then worry about the automations and all of that stuff. Because that's a decent undertaking alone. And the quality of decision making and insights and just your understanding the business will be so much greater if you can just do that. Like if Momentum only did that, I would pay for it.
Yeah.
And then you can do all the other cool stuff that is like really business value driving. But for 99% of organizations, they're not getting adequate data from their sales team into Salesforce. So just start there.
Totally agreed. I love that. We actually released a paper today talking about the importance of first party structured data to everything you want to do inside of AI. Because if you don't have that data foundation, it's really difficult to get AI to function well because it doesn't have the context or the information to do its job, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, those are the first two
Next,
pillars. Those are the first two pillars of your AI transformation strategy. Good
yeah.
first party structured data, what's happening on your calls, get that into Salesforce, and then third party data. Have you mapped your market? Do you have good account contact data? Do you have good insight on who you're trying to go after and why? Just start there. Don't bother with anything else AI related until you can solve those two foundational problems, in my humble
Love
opinion.
I love it. All right. So next from here in the last 2 minutes is just to analyze. So obviously you want to take the time to understand, once you know what they like, for example, the data, is there any other time suckers that are being wasted? And then be able to identify the dollars being wasted on that. And also what is the biggest lift? And then to have targeted programs or automations. So like, for example, it'd be CRM data entry, or even if it's just the basic simple things, like this is the process I would go through in enablement, is understanding where's the most friction and what friction can I eliminate that will make the biggest lift. And that's pretty much my job, was making sure I could do that and add revenue. So you got to identify like some quick wins, for example, like email templates or anything you can to make sure you can have the team go faster. And then lastly is once you get the thing verified and you can justify what you're doing that makes an impact on revenue generating activities. You can scale it, and then rinse and repeat this process around, okay, where are we at? What's holding us back? And even when you're, Kyle, at 67% of RGA, you still want to look for that 80-90% and say, okay, what's the next 10% of getting us there? So there you go. That's my spiel. Anything you want to add, Kyle, to that besides good data?
No, I don't think I don't even know if you need to be this complex with this whole thing. Like if if you don't have something in place like Momentum, just go get it. It is like one of the foundation pillars of your entire AI strategy. Everybody that I talk to every single time asks about AI tooling and AI, all this stuff. And my advice is just like, start here. This is the first part of your stack. Get this in place, figure out your third-party data strategy, then worry about everything else. And you shouldn't need to do a 2-week study. You shouldn't need to like do the big cost quantification. Just do it. Like it's a non-starter. This is your foundation thing. Yeah, if you need to justify the cost to your finance team, sure, maybe you have to jump through the hoops. But in my opinion, it is such a strategic imperative that you are capturing this information that don't overcomplicate it. Just like go get a solution for it. My encouragement would be use Momentum. They're an awesome team. The tool works awesome. So, but I'm a biased opinion, obviously, as an early customer. But you got to go solve this problem somehow.
Yep. I'd rather have you say that than me anyways, which is okay. So I like it.
There
Jordan,
you
anything you
go.
want to add?
No, I think that's spot on. I think there's certainly things you can do that are running, but there's things to do before that are walking and crawling, and getting first party data into your systems, the foundation of any AI strategy. And so getting that kickstarted as soon as possible is going to be a big advantage. That means that you get to take advantage of all of the